welcome to United Church Online. We're glad that you've joined us today.
If you are new to United Church, we'd love to stay in touch with you. So why don't you fill out the Connect card in the description or visit our website for more information.
Get your Bibles, notebooks, and pens ready, and let's receive the word together.
We are currently in a series called Who We Are. It's a series centered around the identity of the church. Who we are as the church. What makes the church different? What makes the church unique? What Jesus expected when he said, I will build my church. What did he have in mind, right? And so that's kind of what we are unpacking. I'm just going to read you the core verse for the series and then I'll move on. But if you've missed any of it, you can pick it up on our YouTube page. In Matthew 16, it says this, Now I say that you are Peter, which means rock. And on this rock I will build my church. And the word Jesus uses for church is the word ecclesia, which means gathering or assembly, right? So he says, I will build my church and all the powers of hell will not conquer it. And I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you forbid on earth will be forbidden in heaven. And whatever you permit on earth will be permitted in heaven. And so we see that Jesus builds his church, he establishes it, and he envisioned something for it, right? One of the things he envisioned is that he envisioned his church or his ecclesia to be resilient and steadfast. And I think that for me fascinates me because whenever I think of the church, I think of historically, the thousands of years that the church has been in existence for, the church has survived wars, pandemics, epidemics, civil wars, protests, and it's still here. Just think about that. We are still a part of the church. There have been movements to try and stop it. There have been other movements that have started and ended, yet the church is still here. And so when Jesus said, I will build my church and all the powers of hell will not conquer it, he really did mean for it to be resilient and steadfast. And there are forces behind it. Obviously, the kingdom of heaven is behind it. But there are elements that helps it get there. And one of those things is what we're speaking about today, is the fact that the church is a united body. And so the title of my sermon is We Are United, right? And this is one of the imperatives. This is one of the elements that makes the church what it is. What makes the church unique is the fact that the church is unlike any other organization. Everything else is there. It exists. It's all good and well. But the church is different. And what makes the church different is the fact that it's united. And it's not just united for the sake of united. Let me unpack. So when you've got the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right, they're four unique biographies of the life of Jesus. John has the most unique of the four. In fact, he writes with a completely different mind in order to show you a different side of Jesus than the other three. And so in the book of John, he includes some accounts that the other three didn't really include. And one of those is the high priestly prayer of Jesus. It's found in John chapter 17. And this is a very unique portion because it shows one of the last prayers that Jesus prayed right before he went into the Passion Week, before he was about to be crucified. And in this prayer, you can tell what Jesus values by what he prays for. He starts his prayer by praying firstly for himself and him and the Father. Then he moves on to praying for the disciples that were with him. And then he goes on to praying for everybody else, the rest of his followers. And so we pick it up in John chapter 17 from verse 20. He says this, I do not pray for these alone, meaning those disciples that were there. It is not for their sake only that I make this request, but for all of those who will ever believe and trust in me through their message, that they all may be one, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be one in us, so that the world may believe without a doubt that you've sent me. I have given them the glory and the honor that you have given me, that they may be one, just as we are one, I in them and you in me, that they may be perfected and completed into one, so that the world may know without a doubt that you sent me and that you love them just as you loved me. So by the prayer that Jesus prays, we can tell what Jesus values. He values the fact that his church becomes united. He values the fact that his church would be the representation of what unity between him and the Father look like. That as we are one, may they be one. As I am in you, they are in me. And so Jesus kind of unpacks this. You'll see, we'll dig into a few more verses where Jesus unpacks what this can and should look like? And so when Jesus says, I will build my church, one of the things he envisioned was that my church will reflect the unity that exists between me and the Father. And so unity for Jesus is not just an arbitrary concept. It's not just a bunch of people in one place. Unity runs so much deeper than what we would imagine. But it's important to understand what it is and what it's not. So let's unpack what unity is not, because whoever you ask, everybody would give you a different answer as to what unity might be. So let's start with this. Unity is not uniformity. Let's get that out of the way, right? Unity is not uniformity. It's not that everybody becomes a cookie-cutter version of someone or something. Like everybody looks like this monolithic, homogeneous group of people where it's all like we all look and think and act the same, kind of like, have you seen in the army, everybody's like, kind of like robotic and we all do the same actions at the same time. It's like, no, that's not what unity is. It's not that we become, a cookie-cutter version of each other. It's not uniformity, right? Unity requires that there is different expression, and in those different expressions we find our commonality, right? It's not that you have to become a version of something and look like, sound like, act like, think like. No, there has to be independence. It's beautiful that we all think uniquely. We bring our strengths, we bring our differences, we bring, all different things to the table. That's what makes unity beautiful. It's not the fact that there's uniformity, but the fact that there is difference, but that difference is leveraged for a greater cause. Number 2, unity is not blind following and agreement. Have you ever thought about that? It's not about blindly following without question. Many people think the moment you ask a question, it's like, hey, you're being divided. No, unity is not about blind following, right? The church is not like no questions asked. No questions, no comments, no disagreements allowed. Everybody just sit down, pay your tithes, and pay attention. No, that's not what unity is about. Unity requires that, we kind of understand that even though there are some things I might not agree with, I still understand the bigger picture, right? And so we've had many people that come to say, hey, why do you do this? Maybe if someone were to ask you, hey, if you were to become the pastor of a church, what would you do differently? And all of us would have our preference. Maybe I'd change the color of the walls. I wouldn't have it so dark, or maybe the carpets would be different. We all have preferences. The point is not that there has to be agreement. It's simply the fact that I'm willing to lay my preference aside because there's a bigger cause to be worked towards. Right? And so it's not just blind following and agreement. Number 3, unity is not about cliques and holy huddles. Right? Many people struggle with this because it's like the moment we become united, we kind of form a group of us four no more. And it's just us. And everybody who wants to come is like, whoa, go through an interview process before you become a part of our clique. Now, the beauty of unity is that it's open to allow others in so that they too can be united to something bigger than just themselves. And so it's so important for you and I to understand that this is not what unity looked like. It's not uniformity. It's not consistent, agreement and blind following. And it's not about cliques and holy huddles. It is bigger than that. What does it entail if it's not just about those things? Let me unpack what unity looks like and how we can cultivate it. Are you still okay? Number 1, unity requires alignment. Unity requires alignment. When Jesus envisioned his church to be united, really one of the things he was asking for is that there would be alignment between what we see and what we do, right? That we become aligned to his vision. That's why I said, may they be one as we are one. Whatever you and I represent, may they be aligned to that. And here's the thing, we South African, we understand the concept of alignment. Because we've all driven on the highway and seen a taxi that is driving this way, but the body is like this way. And you're like, how is this thing going straight? Because there's a misalignment in the wheels. And so you drive and you're thinking, what direction is this thing going in? Is it going straight or is it going that way? So we all know the concept of wheel alignment. When all 4 wheels aren't aligned, what ends up happening? One of 2 things. Either you strain to keep your car going in the direction it should, right? Where if you leave the steering wheel, it starts to go to the right or to the left. Or your car goes in the right direction, but your tires begin to wear out quicker because they are not aligned. And so that same concept, a simple concept, applies that if we are not in alignment, what ends up happening is there's a slow veering over time where we kind of lose track of the mission and what God calls us to. Or that we go in the right direction, but what ends up happening when we're not aligned, we end up burning ourselves out quicker. We end up working against the grain. Why is this so much harder? Why does it feel like I'm not accomplishing what I'm trying to? Maybe there's an alignment issue, right? And so it's important that if we are going to be united, that there is alignment to our unity. Look at how Jesus phrases it in John chapter 17 from verse 3. And this is the way to eternal life, to know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, the one you sent to earth. I brought glory to you here on earth by completing the work that you gave me to do. What is Jesus praying? Father, I was completely aligned to your mission. You've sent me for a purpose. I've done what you've asked me to do. I was completely aligned to what you had called me to do. And so Jesus calls us to alignment because he led by example. If Jesus came to complete the will of the Father, he then says, for the rest of us, we need to be aligned to his mission. We need to be aligned to his goal. And so Jesus points to this, and as an example, the church, you and I, the ecclesia, are aligned to Jesus' mission, Jesus' vision, Jesus' will, and Jesus' way. Right? We're not just all independent, kind of trying to do our own thing. This is not like everybody gets to build their own little kingdom. No, when we come together, there is alignment to what that common purpose is. This is where we're going. This is what God called us to do. This is the mission of the house or the value of the house, and we're going to get aligned behind that. And then the collective body, the collective ecclesia becomes more powerful because we are aligned behind the same thing. It's so frustrating. Maybe you've seen this. I know I've seen it growing up in church, where the moment you begin to see misalignment, there's all sorts of challenges, right? Churches have been split because of misalignment. Because someone wants to do this, and then that person wants that, and then these ones go there, those ones go there. And all it does is it just breeds disunity, and it breaks down the body. But when there's alignment, the church becomes unstoppable. That's what we are called to be. Unity is being aligned in heart, mind, vision, and purpose. And so when you and I find a community of faith, I'm assuming everybody here, obviously you're here, so you attended United, but I don't want to take that for granted. Maybe you're from out of town. Maybe you're even still checking us out. Maybe you're kind of new and you're sussing things out. Let me help you formulate this. Here's the thing about alignment is when you choose a church to be a part of, don't just make the choice based on preference. Make the choice based on alignment. Does this house align with what I value, or what I value, does it align with this house? Is there alignment? Because here's the thing, when there's no alignment, all we do is we end up enduring and we end up compromising, utilizing our gifts for the betterment of the body because there's no alignment. But when there's alignment, suddenly it's easier for me to give of myself, my time, my talent, my resource. I'm willing to leverage what I have for the betterment of the mission and the vision because we are aligned. Right? And so this is why it's important to carefully take the time to pray about what community of faith you become. Maybe one day you find yourself moving out of town and you need to find another church. Go through the process of saying, God, let me pray through the place that you want me to be a part of so that I'm aligned. Aligned to what? Aligned to the teaching. Because here's the thing, the teaching from a particular house is what shapes you. You need to ask yourself, is this the kind of teaching I can allow to shape me? Right? It's a tough job being responsible for delivering a message that shapes people. It's a massive responsibility. However, it's so important. We treat it with tremendous care, but everything that's taught from here ends up shaping us. Right? The input we give for how you handle your marriage and your finance and how you lead your life under the will and way of God, all of this shapes us. We need to be the ones to go, I can let this shape me. I can let this mold me into the Jesus follower I need to be. If not, what ends up happening is, I'll attend a church here, but really I kind of listen to my own people online and I've allowed them to shape me, but there's a misalignment in the shaping they do and the house that I attend. And so we end up developing this weird schizophrenic faith where I'm kind of attending here, but getting input there, and then getting worship there, and then getting Bible study there, and it ends up becoming this weird mishmash where I'm not aligned to anything. For there to be unity, there has to be alignment. Alignment to things like culture, right? A culture is just the way things happen, right? The way we do things. So obviously each church is unique in its culture. Not everything is, it's not about right and wrong. It's just this is how we prefer to do things. For an example, the culture of this house is that we value things like punctuality. We value worship. And so the reason why we value punctuality is because we value worship. And so when we say, hey, church starts at 8, we lock the gates 10 past 8 because we want people to be a part of worship. And so what we're saying is I'm aligning myself to that. I will make it a priority to be there for worship. Why? Because God can do more for me in worship than anything else. You're not coming to hear my sermon. I don't have that much to say. What we're coming to do is we're coming to worship the King of Kings. That's what we've come to do, right? And we've had many times where people are like, I won't come for that. I'll come for the sermon. And then literally people come like intentionally after worship. And we're like, no, that's not what we do here. Here we need to be aligned to the same thing. We value worship. We value generosity. We value all of these things. So we need to align ourselves to the culture. We need to align ourselves to the values, right? The values that the house displays. Can I make those my values? You've seen them on the announcements. We are united, spiritual, invested, generational. These are all just the values that we build upon. Can I make those my values? Am I aligned to that? Am I the kind of person who can cultivate unity amongst others? Am I the person who is led by the Holy Spirit? That's what it means to be spiritual, not like new age yoga, voodoo type, like meditation type stuff. But like genuinely, like can I be led by the Spirit? Am I invested in where God has placed me? And do I have a generational way of thinking? Do I think about those who are yet to come in the kingdom of God? And so all of these things, these are all just little elements that we need to think about. Are we aligned to this? Because when I'm aligned to that, I can cultivate unity. Unity becomes easier to cultivate. Not to say that it doesn't require work, it just becomes easier to cultivate. We're not working against each other, but with each other. Does that make sense? So wherever you and I go, wherever God places us, simply make a decision to be aligned there. Like this, if this is where you've put me, don't be here but long for, my church back home. Things were so much different and man, I just loved it. No, just understand it's a new season. God, where you've placed me, I'm aligned there. You will be so much more effective for the kingdom of God. Number 2, unity requires intentional effort. That's the last point I made just now. Unity requires effort. Contrary to expectation, people think unity is just something that will naturally come about. It requires a bit of work. It requires that you and I put in the effort to fight for unity, because wherever there are people, there will be a threat to unity. Let's be honest. Where people exist, much trouble come with it, as well as. Right? It's like, it would be amazing if it was just like you and the 2 people you get along with most, but all these other people have to show up. And now I have to deal with things like offense and forgiveness and bitterness and giving up my preference and someone sitting in my seat on Sunday. Who do they think they are? Don't they know that's where I sit? You walk into church, you're like, Sure? Like these are all little things, but unity has to be fought for, right? You and I need to get to the point where I understand all these little things that we tend to hold on to. Those are things we can let go of for the sake of the bigger cause and the bigger purpose and what God is trying to accomplish. And so look at how Paul phrases it in the book of Ephesians. In fact, this is the verse that was the core verse on which we built the identity of United Church. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 2. Always be humble. Be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. Make every effort to keep yourselves united in the Spirit, binding yourselves together in peace. In other words, Paul says, hey, it's going to take a bit of effort for you and I to see beyond someone's actions and learn to understand their heart. Go through the effort. Don't just take it at face value and be like, you know what, I walked out of church, I tried to say goodbye to Pastor Randy, he was in a conversation, he didn't see me, so off I go, I'm finding another church. It's like, it takes a lot of effort to learn to understand the heart of someone so that when I'm tempted to take offense, I don't give in to it. I know it's Sunday, I know we've got hundreds of people, you know what, we'll have a conversation later. I know they didn't greet me the way they wanted to. Maybe something happened in the week, but you know what? I'll ask them about it and we'll have a chat. You know what? Maybe I should give them a call in the week just to check if they're okay, because they seemed a bit off. When I greet them, they greeted me with a, oh, hi. And it's like, let me just check if they're okay. It takes effort to look past the action and try and see the heart. Because if I know your heart, I know that you're not being malicious, something must be wrong. And so that causes us to move closer to one another and not to put our guards up and be like, that's the last time I'm greeting someone in this church. Arms folded, eyes forward, to the car. Unity takes effort. It takes effort for you and I to overlook one another's faults and learn to understand. Here's the thing, unity is worth fighting for. There will be attempts. There will always be something that compromises our unity. There will always be an opportunity to bring division. There will always be something that the enemy uses to cause you to be like, aha, I knew it. I knew they're not as holy as they said they would be. I knew, you see, these church people, all of them, they're the same. These Christians. There'll always be something, but it's up to you and I to choose to fight for it and say, no, they're not all the same. Something's happening. I will draw close. We will have a chat and we will find a solution. It's harder because it requires confrontation. It's harder because it might even require a third party to get involved. It's harder because it takes us out of our comfort zone. But unity is worth fighting for. Isn't that true? Number 3, unity shapes our witness. This is my favorite one. Unity shapes our witness because when you and I are working towards unity, have a look at how Jesus kind of phrased it in his prayer. He says, I am in them and you are in me. May they experience such perfect unity that the world will know that you sent me and that you love me that you love them as much as they love me. See, for Jesus, unity is a catalyst towards witnessing. When you and I are united, when the ecclesia, when the church is of common mind and common heart and common vision and purpose, it begins to become a witness to the world at large of what God can do with a group of people that under no other circumstances would they gather the way they're gathering. The world uses everything to divide people. Think about that. It's like, who do you support? You support that. I can't be friends with you. Who do you vote for? You vote for. I can't be friends with you. Where do you live? There. No, we can't get on. Like just name a topic, the world will find something to be divided about. Yet, within the ecclesia, all of those boundaries fall flat. And Jesus says, let me take this group of people that under no other circumstances do they have anything in common. Different classes, different ethnicities, different cultures, different everything. But under this banner, the banner that is Jesus, people will see that there's something bigger happening here. What causes you guys to just come together and hang out and love each other and bless each other, and like those men coming together praying and laying hands on one another, and there's a guy that's 45 and a guy that's 16 and somehow they look like they're friends. That's just weird. It's like, no, this is community. There's something that brings people together here, and the world will know by that. See, we are united to God the Father, through God the Son, by the power of God the Spirit. And this is what God wants. See, when this happens, we become a witness. And when we invite others into this, we're not inviting them to an event. We're inviting them into this way of life. So when you and I, have an opportunity to invite someone or witness or share our faith, we're not just saying, hey, come to this event with me on Sunday because you've got nothing better to do. What I'm saying is, hey, come and do this way of life with me. This way of life where a group of people come together for a greater purpose, lay down their preferences, lay down their way, and follow Jesus. When you and I are willing and able to do that, it becomes a witness unto the world. See, the church is the only place and the most significant place that exists for those who are not here yet. And when you and I display such radical unity, those who are not here yet, in the beginning might be skeptical. I've seen people who are incredibly skeptical of the church, and they ask questions and they criticize, and that happens. But here's the thing that we get criticized for in the beginning becomes the thing that people run to us for later. In the beginning, it's like, this is a bunch of happy, clappy weirdos. This look weird. And then eventually, someone goes through a crisis, and you know what? I remember I've got this friend, and I remember when she was going through a marital challenge, there were a group of people that she met with that prayed for them every week. Let me just give her a call to find out what happened. When I went through I've got a teenager who's kind of going wayward, and I don't know what to do, but I remember I've got this one friend in church, and her teenager goes to this youth group, and somehow he had a faith wobble, but he seems to be okay with God. Let me chat to them about how they did it. So I've got this friend of mine who's going through the worst time, and it just feels like they're depressed, but somehow they had the strength to keep going, and I'm in that place, and I don't know how they did it. Let me have a chat with them. And the very thing that at first people kind of look with a critical eye for becomes the thing that people comes and says, how did you navigate it when you were in that season? It's like, hey, I had community around me. I couldn't have done it on my own. My marriage lasted because I had people praying for us. My son or my daughter returned home because they had people praying. My husband changed, or my wife changed because we were praying together. And that becomes the thing that makes us unique. It's the unity that exists here. That's our witness. See, when unity is present in the ecclesia, here's what happens. We all move towards Christ-likeness. We all are on the same journey. Whether you like it or not, whether it looks like it or not, we might all have different things happening in our world. But guess what? All of us are on the same journey. We're all just trying to become more like Jesus. That means that when I see imperfection in someone, I don't have to judge because I know you are on a journey the same way I am. I'm just able to see yours a bit more outwardly. Mine is a bit more inwardly. That means that when I'm walking and someone doesn't greet me the way I expect, I don't get my knickers in a knot. I'm just like, you know what, they'll get there. I remember when I was there. In fact, I can maybe help them get there, When we're going through challenges and we see each other's humanity surface, because that's what happens when we draw closer. What happens is we start to see the humanity in others, right? When we see each other's humanity surface, we begin to be more patient with each other because I know you are on a journey with Jesus just like I am. And we can help each other get there. So when there's unity present in the ecclesia, we collectively move towards Christ-likeness, and we help each other get there. Secondly, we become an outstanding example to the world. When there's unity present, the world begins to look at the church as an example, not as a critique. It's like, man, there's something about these people that's different. And another thing is, when unity is present, things like gossip and slander are silenced. You know why? Because suddenly my priority is to protect you, not to expose you. Right? And so when I'm tempted to kind of, give in to have you heard what's happening to so-and-so? No, I don't want to know. It's none of my business. But you know what? Chat to them and then maybe ask how you can pray for them. You're okay. See, when there's temptation for gossip and slander and talking behind each other's back, when there's unity, those things are done away with because our goal is to protect one another. You know that thing that I'm not going to say do, I'm going to say that Christians used to do, where the gossip and slander comes in the form of a prayer request. You guys, we really need to pray for Pastor Shani. I don't know if you know what's been happening, but anyways, let me just fill you in with some context. So this is what it was. Anyways, just pray for them. Just pray for them. No, but those things don't appeal to us because our job is to protect. Unity protects the body, not destroys the body or breaks the body down. Unity protects the body. Whether I like you or not, whether we get along or not, whether you and I are friends or not, my job is to protect you. And for you to protect me. If we all have that mindset, all of those things begin to become silenced. And one of the things that happen when unity is present, mindsets such as racism, tribalism, and discrimination are all done away with because there's no room to separate based on these cultural barriers, right? It's fascinating to me because, we come out of a unique country where we know that people were separated based on race and class and ethnicity and all of these things. But the beautiful thing is, when you come under the banner of Jesus, all of those things fall away. That's why Paul can say, therefore in Christ, there is no Jew, nor Gentile, slave, nor free, male, nor female. All of those boundaries are done away with, and we become a united body. Paul says that's what the ecclesia is meant to be. What would separate people before is now the very thing that brings people together and says, look at what God can do with this group of people. Look at what God can do with a group of people who simply have one vision and one purpose, not giving in to what the culture will use to separate them. It's like, I want to go to that church, but, I'm colored and there's like 5 other colored people there. I'm black, but I'm Xhosa black, but are there other Xhosas? Because so the thing with tribalism and racism, many people don't understand. They kind of think that, okay, it's just black, white. But you don't realize that there's also something called tribalism where cultures are like, hostile towards each other. It's like if you have a child that's this, it's like if your child doesn't bring someone in your tribe, it's like, yay, go back, find another one. Fill in another application form, that kind of thing. But the beautiful thing is that in church, suddenly we realize that we all are more similar than what we realize. We had this chat, it really made me laugh. I think it was around Human Rights Day, it was a public holiday. And normally we have chats with the kids and we talk about things like politics. And our kids are still young, but we try and just help them understand what's happening. And our son, Levi, he saw a picture of Nelson Mandela and, he kind of points out, he goes, hey, that's the president that's responsible for mommy and daddy being able to get married. How's that? I'm like, what? And I even forgot that we kind of had a talk about where the country was at and how people became united again. It's like, no, he was, and he's like, yeah. And he says to his sister, he's like, Amelia, that's the president that if it wasn't for him, that mommy and daddy would still not be able to be married today. I'm like, okay, so kids do listen. I just thought that was fascinating to see, But these are the things that later on we realize there's value in. The variety of different types of people in the body. We draw from each other's strengths. We learn from one another. We draw close to one another. And suddenly all those mindsets that we grew up with suddenly get dissipated because, hey, you're just like me. We want the same thing out of life. We are more similar than we realize. See, here's the thing. The benefits of unity far outweigh the benefits of isolation. I think there will always be a temptation to isolate and withdraw. Those days come where on Sunday it's like, man, it's been a rough week. And everybody's busy. Everybody has a crazy schedule. Everybody's got deadlines. All the children have extramural activities. All the children have tighter schedules than adults that should have tighter schedules. There's so much going on. There will always be the temptation to say, just chill. But the benefits of unity far outweigh that of isolation. You and I need to be willing to have an inner talk and say, hey, I need to be with my community. I need to be united with others because it's in that I am uplifted, I am strengthened, I am encouraged, I'm drawn towards a bigger purpose. It's in that God does more in me than what I can realize. Not when I'm alone, but when we are together. And so I need to understand that. And so as I close off, one final observation. Unity begins with Jesus. There's no way for you and I to have unity or for us to be united if Jesus is not at the center, because it's Jesus that holds it all together. Colossians chapter 1, verse 16 and 17, it says, He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. Had it not been for Jesus, we would still be divided by all factors that divide us. But because of Jesus, there is unity. John chapter 14, verse 6 says this, Jesus told him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Look at this. No one comes to the Father except through me. Had it not been for Jesus, there would be no unity with the Father. There would be no way to be united to the Father. There would be no way to be united to the body. There would be no way for you and I to sit the way we are sitting today. Jesus made it all possible. And so the only way to be united or reunited to the Father is because of Jesus. Many people think there are other ways, other forms of spirituality, other forms of practices, other forms of cultural things that we can do. But the reality is it all stems from Jesus. The only way to be a truly united church for the ecclesia is to go through Jesus. Jesus unites God to His people and His people to each other. And so you and I need to take the time to think where we stand in our unity to the church. Not just the fact that, I go to a church, but how united am I to that church? Have I been willing to lay my preferences aside for the bigger vision? Have I been willing to fight for the things that matter? Have I been willing to look at the things I value? Have I been willing to align myself and say, okay, God, I'm willing to be aligned to what you are doing for the sake of the mission moving faster, not to resist it, not to kind of, look with a skeptical eye, not to attend here, but kind of really get all of my alignment somewhere else, but to really apply myself for the sake of the bigger mission.
We believe that this message was helpful to you.
We'd love to stay in contact with you. So why don't you follow us on Instagram at United Church SA or contact us on our WhatsApp number.
Be blessed.